Hey there, welcome to episode 55 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording in the early afternoon on Friday, March 15th, 2024. It's been an interesting week and some topical items in the links today, all around the general notion that our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, and in fact our economic geography in general, would benefit greatly from continuous introspection. So that's what we are talking about today. Are you an entrepreneur, an innovator, or both? Are you keen on starting a business here or possibly relocating here to, or maybe even bringing a business idea to the Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem? Are you doing it or are you thinking about it? And if the latter, are you seeing some red flags? We should talk about it. So the link section in your audio program episode description, podcast description if you like, wherever you found this audio program should have the descriptive text, which includes our link section. We'll get started with shameless self-promotion. The buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo link profile page has links to my various productions, projects, and so on. These are just connected together through there. You're under no obligation to buy me a coffee, but if you do choose to add some money to the tip jar there, it will go towards coffee, which powers all of my endeavors. As well, the Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/DanHugo link, similar deal. So those are promotion channels and methods of reaching people. You can be financially supportive or merely join in, listen, maybe be a guest, etc. So I'll be making more use of these into the near term, 4 audio programs per week, nonprofit projects, etc. And one of those projects figures into this continuous introspection idea. Coincidence. And a few more links. These are all pretty current. Nevada's 5.4 unemployment rate. This is the state, 5.4. It is above average, aren't we always? And it means a strong economy, as it turns out. So I'm going to pull up this. I almost hesitate to make fun of this person, but I'm going to pull up this article. I should have done this already. Sorry. All right. So it exceeds the national average, a signal of healthy economy, says the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. So the quote is, DETR says, one reason for the high unemployment rate here in Nevada is we have fewer people who have lost their jobs and more people coming into the labor market. This means they've seen less long-term unemployment in Nevada. That seems strange. I think it's more healthy for the economy if you have an unemployment rate that's higher because people are seeing that opportunity and stepping in, period. If they were still on the sideline, we might have an unemployment rate that is 1% less. It would be at 4.4 instead of 5.4, but the economy would be worse for it. So I think what he's saying, and this is David Schmidt, is the economist in the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. So I think what he's saying here is by people declaring that they are unemployed, that they are pursuing unemployment status, benefits, and so on, indicates that they are searching for jobs, which means the economy is vital. Now, the majority, and this is also in the article, the majority of unemployed people in Nevada are between 16 and 19. So the economy that they are talking about, based on this majority percentage, they don't give an actual, is probably fast food or jobs that don't require, first of all, that you be over 18. So that leaves out a lot of jobs here in Southern Nevada. But it's an indication that the economy that is strong is for people that are not yet out of high school or are just beginning college. That's not a bad thing, but I think there's a slight disconnect between claiming the economy is healthy because of unemployment and the people who are actually unemployed. It's something to think about. Now, let's get back to the notes. 44,000 people in Southern Nevada, so probably Clark County. Think of it, Clark County, 44,000 await affordable housing. I believe the last number I looked at specifically was there were 65,000 units shortage of in the affordable housing inventory. So 44,000 are waiting. I know there's proactive construction, more high density multifamily dwellings, apartment complexes, and so on. So there are 44,000 that await affordable housing. Now, if you move to Vegas, you face some challenges as far as proof of income, employment history, and so on for most, not all, but most landlords, property management companies, and so on. So it's not only just being affordable, it's just being able to prove that you are able to live here. That's anecdotal, but it's something to be aware of. There were 30,000 evictions for 2023 and more coming for 2024. That is probably, I don't know if that's connected to unemployment and affordable housing. I'm not laughing. That's not funny. The bottom line, though, is these are not huge numbers. Clark County has a population of approximately 2.4 million people, according to the census data from the federal government. So this is not a majority of the population by any means. However, we being a society of humans, it's still good to understand these things. Interestingly, if we have a lot of business moving into Las Vegas, they either must relocate their employees or hire new employees. So the question will be, how will gentrification impact cost of living, housing availability, and so on? So that will be interesting to watch, which we'll get to towards the end. As far as introspection, top 10 cocktail cities rated by bartenders. Guess what? This is on Travel and Leisure. It's a major news outlet, of course. Top 10 cities, top 10 cocktail cities. Las Vegas, not among them. No locations in Nevada. I just point this out because the fun economy still has its own work to do. 5 reasons not to retire in Nevada. This is by GoBankingRates.com, another substantial news outlet, of course. But an interesting rundown. There are a couple of things that are worth knowing, not only for people who may or may not want to retire in Nevada, but just in general, some economic considerations, things to think about. It's a list of things among a larger list of things to think about if you start a company and are concerned with talent pool, access to services. So you don't have to hire everyone, but certainly the availability of consultancy and vendors, service vendors, supply chains, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a list of things to consider if you're starting or moving a business here. But if you're retiring, this is more about the human factor. What happens if you move here? You want to look at things like education and affordable housing, or maybe you're making the big dollars and you just need housing. So it's a list of things. So I just found this list to be sort of interesting. There's a Clark County hearing on Formula One. This is an ongoing struggle. Now, I've done several episodes on the fun economy and how Formula One figured into that. The problem, this is my opinion, the Formula One race has some winners and losers. I don't mean on the racetrack. So big business, the resorts, the LVCVA, friends of LVCVA, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, they probably did okay. You had tourism. I think they claimed 300,000 people came for the event or during that time interval. So everybody wins, right? Unless you are one of the many businesses who suffered tangible material losses, real financial red to the tune of millions of dollars, and loss of business in general due to loss of access through construction, detours and blockages and whatnot, alterations of foot traffic due to some bridge placement, general, maybe perhaps if you were not a Formula One fan, you did not plan to visit the Las Vegas area during this window of time where construction was leading to trees getting cut down and a general change in the customer experience, which was reflected in user reviews and in public statements and probably on various channels of social media, TikTok and Instagram and so on. So if Vegas was under construction as it always is. But if it's under construction so that it had a material impact on the tourist and visitor experience, that may have had an impact on other businesses, especially small businesses, who otherwise benefit from people not only living here but visiting here. And I've talked about this previously as well. The locals, which I am one, after 10 years, I think I qualify. The locals tended to not, and we don't really go downtown. I'm sorry, we don't really go to the Strip. Probably go downtown, Summerlin, Arts District, downtown. So the Strip is usually not the primary hangout. There are events and performer residences and attractions and trade shows and so on. So it's not never. But there were some articles written contemporaneously that locals were staying home, that even downtown business suffered because people didn't want to deal with traffic, other excitement around the Formula One race. So successful for some, not for all. And the meetings there's a lawsuit on the table. We'll see how this meeting and presentation, they want to figure out what worked and what didn't. These are my words, but this is what the article says. If you read the article or watch, there are various video interviews with different people and the county commissioners and the business people who lost money floating in the air. That's one of the problems. You must go seek these things out. But if there is a possibility of reflecting, retrospecting on the Formula One race before, during, and after, hey, I should do 3 audio programs on this very channel about that. Take a look at what could be done better in the next iteration of Formula One coming up in November of 2024, right around the corner. Arguably too late to start with a really earnest effort, but try nonetheless. So will the lawsuit continue? Who knows? But surely the time to talk to local businesses who would be impacted by all of this chaos would have been a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, not after they've suffered with the celebration and financial benefit to some, and great headlines and accolades and much rejoicing, but suffering material losses by others. So this is sort of an asymmetric problem. I've talked about this a few times. The sense that the people driving are not looking, if you view it as a bus or a plane, not looking back and seeing if the passengers are doing okay. So, hey, we got another professional sports event here. We don't really seem to bother with checking with people to see if it will have a negative impact on their business. So, Clark County hearings on Formula One. Yeah, so check that out, especially if you're in Vegas and you're curious about how the next Formula One race and the before, during, and after will impact the businesses you like and support. And even if you're a visitor planning to be here or planning to not be here, it'd be interesting if we could figure out who made a material travel decision based on Formula One, social media, other reporting, like, maybe I'll skip Vegas because of all the construction and the trees going missing and so on. Something to think about. Almost like a continuous introspection project. Boring is not boring, but they will keep boring. The Boring Company, this is an Elon Musk venture that has projects all over the world, except for, well, they don't. There's one big project in Vegas, I think. So they've added a few more lines in the midst of OSHA. You know OSHA. They're here to look out for the worker so that the days since last injury can be an ever-increasing, monotonically increasing integer, not so close to zero. The Boring Company is now getting some attention from OSHA, from worker complaints about safety, some injuries, chemical-related exposure to chemicals while underground. I'm not going to connect these two things, but nuclear testing was a thing. Maybe it still is. So Boring, they're not so boring after all. They're making the big headlines, just like all of the other Elon Musk properties. So in the face of that, in the face of the OSHA examination, investigation, I don't want to say they've been cited yet. Keep an eye on that if you can find reporting on it. Our own mayor of Las Vegas reminded everyone of her concern and that she was the lone dissenting voice on the LVCVA board that approved the project to dig these boring tunnels. And anyway, the LVCVA, they drive this place. I thought it was the LVGEA, but it's turns out it's a different 5-letter agency. So LVCVA, a one dissenting vote from the mayor of California, the mayor of Las Vegas, and being on the LVCVA board, I suppose, as a mayor of the city of Las Vegas is one thing, but the boring tunnels do not go into Vegas, as far as I'm aware. Not much anyway. They're mostly the Strip, and now there's going to be a route, 2 more routes added between the airport and the Strip, and then there was another one. Anyway, but the important part here, not the fact that they're just continuing to give boring company work because no one else in the world will, but the fact that they are under investigation by OSHA for worker endangerment, which is not funny, but it is sort of funny that who cares? Who cares about the guy, the person, I was going to say the little guy, but the person directly and materially impacted by this, as long as we get the headlines and the hype. That's the important part. If you go to the lvcva.org website, I've linked to this many times, and I don't really want to promote them too much, but if you go to, let me make sure that's lvcva.com, sorry. lvcva.com, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, if I can speak today, .com. If you go there, the homepage, pretty much an ad. Let me make sure this is still true. So as I'm talking today, they've changed it. Be a category of 1. Okay, so the homepage for LVCVA used to be an underground loop station photo with the funky lighting for the boring tunnel projects. Anyway, that's another element of our economic terrain to consider, is how decisions are made in the face of strange news or future potential issues. Formula One, boring tunnels, our soon-to-be new baseball stadium in place of the Tropicana, sort of a historic landmark for many, and the importation of one of the lesser Major League Baseball teams, the Oakland A's, moving to Vegas, if they can sort that out. So the government money public funds flowed into the Oakland A's relocation project before a plan was in place, before a complete funding picture was drawn, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how this unfolds. I've told my story before about the UMax Coliseum, which was going to be the then Oakland Raiders and the Oakland Coliseum, and my employer at the time, UMax Computer Corporation, or really UMax Data Systems in Taiwan, buying the name, which is all the rage now. So it would have been the UMax Coliseum, but for one of the participants in the Joint Powers Group, which governed such agreements regarding the Coliseum and maybe other things. And it was indeed the Oakland A's who threw a wrench into that. And so there would be no UMax Coliseum. So I am waiting for the drama to continue to unfold with the Oakland A's, but that's just it's an anecdote. Economic diversification is a work in progress. There's a Las Vegas Weekly article from February of 2023. So this one's not so current. Let me pull this up. And too many tabs. How many tabs do you have open? So, no. So continues to diversify the economy. So from February 2023. Tina Quigley is the CEO of the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. She was formerly the CEO of the Regional Transit Commission for Southern Nevada. So our bus system is something Tina, Ms. Quigley, knows a thing or two about, maybe. I'm not a fan of our bus system, so take that for what it's worth. They're talking to a person who has a company called Analytics. No, what is it called? Applied Analytics. So they do things like probably introspection. Not sure if it's continuous. It's a Las Vegas firm. It's a data-driven firm. And it started in 1997. So this is all in this article. There's a turn. He took a turn as executive with the Raiders in the stadium here. There's an undeniable strength of tourism in the Las Vegas area, the fun economy. And the fun economy, by the way, if you have forgotten, professional sports is a recent addition, gaming, tourism in general. So coming here for shows and shopping and so on. I said gaming. Entertainment. So that's specifically shows. So tourism is coming to visit. Entertainment and gaming. Professional sports, gaming, tourism, entertainment, and conventions, of course. So people who come here for CES, NAB, a host of conventions every week. It's actually staggering how many shows are. It's like a couple times a week. There's a convention, a trade show, similar. So the fun economy is certainly continuing to even grow in the face of a big downturn during the pandemic times. So since his beginning in 1997, he's seen a cycle of economic gain here, I guess, for the cycle 3 or 4 times during his career. So that's in the last 30 years approximately. So he's claiming that the strength of tourism is skewing our sense of what an expanding and possibly strong economy really is, and diversifying would be a good idea, a big thing, which I would tend to agree with. Now, you can't discount the strength of the tourism economy. The fun economy is strong, but it's the diversity and the resilience to shocks such as the pandemic lockdowns that are the concern. That was why there was a diversity in an economic diversity push during and after the pandemic, right? Especially after. So there's a thing called the Hackman Index, which I've also was linked to, and it's an indication of the diversity of skill sets, a regional economic specialization or diversity. So what do you have? The skill sets, the talent pool is part of it, right? So the article goes on to talk about employment and et cetera. Now, Nevada, in the southern region, so there's a southwestpolicy.com link I've also added there, includes surveys of all the states in the Southwest. So in the article, which is recent, which is from March 8th to 2023. So shortly after this article was published, which is strange, the article that they linked to, anyway, we won't even go there. So the states that are part of this focus are Utah, Colorado, California, Texas, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma. So the index, you want to get up to 100. 100 is better. And Oklahoma is 58.4. Texas is 74.7, which I find difficult to believe, but I'm going to assume that's because Texas is vast in area and has a tremendous number of people who are not in Austin. So I think Austin might skew. Anyway, so Texas is 74.7, Nevada 74.5. So New Mexico is 63.5. I'm curious about that because of the presence of more technology centers in Albuquerque. But Nevada, 74.5, not a great score. Arizona hits the high score, 96.4. And Colorado, California doing pretty well. Utah as well. So take home, you can read this entire article as well. Median household income, Arizona score of 96.4 is the best in the region. It's not a measure of median household income, but this is one of the components that they're looking at. A typical typical household income in Nevada, with our very low score by comparison, has similar earnings. So that means that people in Nevada are generally making about the same amount of money, but in a narrower band of economic diversity. So guess what? The number one employer, or number one and number two, if you view them as two separate counties, the number one employer in Nevada is the school district. So the Washoe County School District and the Clark County School District, number one employer in the state. So a lot of employment is taking place in the education sector, if you will. Education is not known for door-busting salaries. Nevada also doesn't rank very well across the board in education compared to other states. So if our number one employer is focused on education, perhaps that's one of the reasons why the median household income of Nevada is not reflective of the strength of those employers. The top 15 employers, 9 of them are in gaming. So if you are in a service industry with tipping, your income can be inflated by gratuities. The skill set may not factor into economic diversity for a service industry employee, especially if we look back at the 16 to 19 age range of the largest fraction of the unemployed on record in Nevada. Those young people are not able to fully participate in the service industry in the areas of alcohol and other such things, service of alcohol and whatnot. So you limit some of your younger members of the unemployed to certain jobs with what would probably be lower income levels. They may or may not be contributing to the household income, but in general, I find it interesting that the population of Nevada is smaller than Arizona. Our surface area on the planet is not small. Our population is small. Something to think about. And why is it that Arizona has such a high score? Well, one of the reasons I will tell you, they have multiple state universities. They were very quick to pivot into biotechnology and whatnot. I've covered this in a previous episode about what a real Silicon Valley might be. Semiconductors has been one of Arizona's fundamental economic pillars for at least 24 years, at least longer, really. The likes of Intel, Honeywell, Motorola, and so on, been there, done that in the central Arizona area. And then they added biotech about 20 years ago. And it's going well. So the ability to pivot, to grow their economy, to make changes, to have a diverse workforce, 96.4, that's a wide range by comparison to ours. So the number one employer, education in Nevada, top 15 employers, 9 of them are in gaming, hospitality, probably on the Strip. That includes Reno as well, so several companies are across the state. I know we're still in the links. So I do have a link to the Hackman Index article, which I was just flipping through there. And I will end with my own take on a headline. Las Vegas needs to be aggressive. Be aggressive getting businesses to relocate here. There's a $2 million project, the Locate Las Vegas, linked in this article. It's a Review Journal article. It's by Sean Hemmersmere, so it may or may not be a deep dive into this issue. It certainly just quotes Tina Quigley again. They must increase their efforts. They identified 16 potential businesses who might either relocate or establish a presence in the Southern Nevada area thanks to the Super Bowl. So if you're attracting people to the greater Vegas area to see a sporting event, that may or may not hint at what these 16 companies are, what their intent would be. I will say, if there is an Amazon presence here, it's mostly, the fact that they purchase Zappos, but mostly warehouse, some logistics and customer support. So a lot of technical development is happening in other locations. Their HQ and HQ2 endeavors. So Google has a customer service facilities here. So companies can establish a customer service hub, phone banks, telephony support, and so on. So it's an interesting thing. It may be some of those companies, but if you are thinking about moving to Greater Vegas for the fun economy, the question is whether you yourself are part of the fun economy, if you would benefit directly from it, or if you figure being near it will be sufficient. So if you would benefit from the tourism, well, that's one reason, right? 40 million people. It's a nice group of people to be able to practice your inbound marketing skills on. So those are the links. Finally, at long last, we can get started with the real show. So how is the ecosystem doing? My own 4-pillar model is a sort of simplified, because there's dual meanings for 3 of the pillars. You could argue that it's more. Some people will have an 8-pillar model, but for the sake of simplicity, I break it down to culture of innovation and a sense of community. I don't like the word community. It is thrown around pretty easily, but here we'll simply say that people are able to find each other and collaborate. If you wanted to start a startup, could you find co-founders based on the people you engage with? So the community, insofar as it is related to the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. And a culture of innovation, this is a desire to think outside the box. It is easier when you're surrounded by people like this. I will remind you, listener, that I spent many, many years during the dot-com boom in Silicon Valley. So I was awash in culture of innovation, government legislation and regulation, and then the infrastructure that comes either directly or indirectly through government funding, government grants, government oversight, sort of a city plan that's frequent, a 10-year, 20-year, 50-year plan, So that would include everything from transportation to communications infrastructure, access to power and water, right? Got to have those to have a business. So government in general, education and a talent pool. The talent pool need not be educated. That is to say, not all of your talent pool will require a PhD or a master's or even a bachelor's degree from a college. However, having education in general or having a talent pool that either emerges or relocates is essential, right? All of these are essential, all three of these. And then the fourth one, access to capital. That's pretty self-explanatory. One question, though, would be local, that is access to capital who are part of the ecosystem directly versus outside capital. Outside capital brings more money into our economy, but it also often comes with strings attached, and those strings often get tugged to pull an invested startup closer to the source. Sand Hill Road, Silicon Valley, maybe Denver, maybe Austin, maybe North Carolina, maybe who knows where. The economic diversification article in the links. So this is the one from Las Vegas Weekly from February of 2023. Points out how the low skills diversity, the Hackman score for Nevada, matters not only for entrepreneurial innovation endeavors, right? So you may want to start something or invent something and start a business around it, and having a pool of people and talent and diversity in general. So the diversity could come from hiring, could come from a skill set that's part of your economy, or it could come from the access to services and supply chains and whatnot. I think I referred to this earlier. So economic diversity in a particular area helps you to find the things that you can't do yourself or don't have the resources to do yourself and so on, that they exist. So economic diversity is helpful in promoting economic diversity and certainly entrepreneurialism and innovation. Moving a business here of any size may require a local talent pool and workforce development. And the question is, do we have that? I will remind those who have not listened to every single episode that part of our Innovate for Vegas effort was going to be enabling and encouraging ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better by local innovators. So a local innovator is somebody, probably a high school or college student, maybe a recent graduate, maybe a recent boot camp graduate. I'm talking about mostly tech sector here, but it could be anyone with an artistic or creative bent, an interest in working with humans, human interface, human experience, marketing, sales, testing. Not everything is code. We recently completed our name change, so we are now officially, legally, and determined by the IRS to be the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, formerly Code for Vegas Foundation. So the goal was going to be to connect more people with a desire to be civic volunteers with a coherent set of projects with a roadmap to some sort of benefit. The problem is, and this was expressed to me by our very own City of Las Vegas CTO, whatever the government title would be, but CTO, Chief, not technology officer, but also disruption officer, I think is the other title thrown around sometimes. So it was offered to me that the younger people in the Vegas area seem not to be interested in taking on some of the opportunities that present themselves, that quite literally companies move here and then leave because it's difficult to hire, or they can relocate to places with more of a talent pool or perhaps more economic diversity in general. So I would be curious to know how the Hackman Index correlates with the ease with which some might either commence a corporate presence for an existing company, or if they would consider relocating probably a smaller company that is already in operation, so not a startup, from a place like California or Texas to the greater Vegas area. So what's in it for them? But I will say, very tricky to find a motivated, innovation, culture-oriented pool of human beings that want to be a part of innovation and entrepreneurialism. And so that may be a challenge. It's something to ask about. Suppose we had a continuous introspection program in place. Our I cannot talk today. Our fun economy appears to be doing well. I believe I have posted or I've included links in previous articles. Every month there is usually some glowing news about the billions of dollars of of gaming revenue, for example. So people come to Vegas and Reno. So they come to Nevada to gamble. I want to say there's like a 60-40 split in monthly gaming revenue. I think they're profits. I mean, I don't know if they measure gaming. I haven't delved into this. Whether they measure the gaming revenue as a separate line item and they don't account for cost of revenue. So how much did you have to pay for rent and the dealers and the other employees and security and supplies, chips, cards, other gaming devices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So bottom line though, there's a lot of money coming in from gaming. So the fun economy is doing okay just from that measure. And then you add the professional sports element, which is only growing. And the fun economy is doing okay. By the way, the UNLV Office of Economic Development has a pending, I've not checked in the last 30 days, a pending trademark application. It is in review. It was submitted August, I believe it was, of 2023. So it's nearing the point where it will be granted and they will have a little TM over the fun economy. So that's why I spell fun economy with a 1, F1, fun economy. I've talked about this in previous episodes with only more excitement building and the return of Formula One and the new athletics stadium, athletics, as in Oakland Athletics. Not clear if they're going to keep that name. I've seen that mentioned somewhere. The A's stadium in place of the Tropicana. So these are things that are doing arguably well, although some of the oversight and the impact on the underrepresented or unheard business owners, individuals, tourists who decide not to come here because of construction and other things may not be on the radar. But anyway, so the fun economy doing okay. As is often the case, there is a comparison between the greater Vegas area and Silicon Valley. I've heard this many times. You've heard me say this on these audio programs. We should stop saying we're going to be the next Silicon Valley. First of all, you don't want to be the next Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was a interesting thing, and it's sort of making a return with the giant explosion bubble, perhaps, of AI, whether it's hardware development, NVIDIA, AMD, both have either based completely or extremely strong presence in Silicon Valley proper. I used to drive by both the NVIDIA and AMD, sort of the AMD White House was a cool building. I don't think they're based there as their main headquarters anymore. And I believe NVIDIA they moved to a much larger campus on San Tomas, I think. So yeah, so both very strong there. So hardware, and then of course the likes of Facebook, Meta, Google, I think OpenAI is based there as well. Microsoft has a presence in Silicon Valley, though they, of course, are based in Redmond. Amazon, mostly based in the Seattle area, but where Amazon can be anywhere you want in 2 days, right? So Silicon Valley is making a bit of a comeback. The RTO, the return to office movement, may or may not force more people to move back to Silicon Valley after escaping. But the bottom line is Silicon Valley is actually sort of showing signs of life once again. The poop on the sidewalks hopefully will not be much of a headline, although it's still a problem. Homeless. As someone who lived in Silicon Valley for almost 15 years, the notion that someone could live in that area and not make ridiculous amounts of money in the tech sector, like we used to discuss this. How could anyone work in a fast food restaurant in Silicon Valley and forget about supporting a family or paying rent? So it's an interesting place. Do you want to turn your city into that level of gentrification where the very people who enable one of the observations was that most law enforcement people in the city where I was living, Sunnyvale, could not afford to live in Sunnyvale. So you force a disconnect. No longer are the people protecting the neighborhood a part of the neighborhood. Something to think about. So the notion that we're going to be the next Silicon Valley has been floating around. Not going to happen. Silicon Valley emerged since post-war technological evolution in a place with existing military industry, the likes of Lockheed. Lockheed, I think, started in the South Bay in the early 50s, but that was a part of it. But there was a military presence, general Navy base. Being a coastal region during World War II, there was a strong military presence in the interests of national security and defense. So there was already a military presence. Military contracting became an element of the early Silicon Valley days, probably continues to this day. Strong educational foundations with the likes of Stanford, and today, we still see the evidence of strong education there. So Stanford would figure prominently, though. Professor Frederick Terman, I always say Terman, I say Terman, I mean Terman, Terman. Professor Terman was well known as a radar engineer during the war, relocated to the Stanford area and played a role as a provost and a department chair, I think it was. So you can do some research there for Professor Frederick Terman, Terman. Save that. He connected talent. So he spoke with Hewlett and Packard. He convinced Shockley to move from Bell Labs to the Menlo Park area and start Shockley Semiconductors, which would lead eventually through the Traitorous Eight to the development of Intel. Those are actual silicon notions, semiconductors. So the silicon in Silicon Valley. He connected military funding, so early access to capital with research projects, connecting educational foundations at Stanford, and the talented people who would go on to create an emergent Silicon Valley, culture of innovation, to say the least. Steady feedback loop of capital, innovation, and talent. So once when I was in college, there were essentially two places I was looking at. I was considering San Diego because there is a bit of a tech sector in the San Diego area, and Silicon Valley. I had been an Apple fanboy since my early days. The thought of moving to Silicon Valley and working for Apple was high on my list of wish. Eventually I would work at Apple. So the feedback loop was more money would come because there was more innovation, because there was more talent, because there was more money, because there was more innovation, and so on. The infamous dot-com boom. I moved to Silicon Valley in 1993 after graduating from college. The dot-com boom arguably started right after I got there. Coincidence? The greater Vegas area has leaned heavily into what is now known as, trademark pending, the fun economy. Arguably before, but certainly in the 50s, the establishment of gaming, casinos, entertainment, resorts, etc. Nuclear test site figured prominently into the atomic myth. Watching the Glow Atomic Liquors, one of the oldest freestanding bars in downtown Las Vegas, associated with that, as well as several other bits of Las Vegas history. So visiting Las Vegas was always the fun thing, and thus the fun economy. Will it be the next Silicon Valley? Probably not. I haven't really heard that as much so much lately. I will say, though, that Southern Nevada does lead the way, and this is not to be sold short, does lead the way in water conservation research. So sustainability, the ability to recover as much water as possible, have it end up in a reservoir such as Lake Mead, being able to process that water, make it potable, limitations on irrigation and conservation and so on. Even the infamous Bellagio fountain must fit into water usage constraints regarding surface evaporation and so on. So water conservation in general, sustainability are, given our weather and our ecosystem, biological ecosystem, it makes sense, and we're doing well there. So conservation is not bad at all. It is not the basis of the next Silicon Valley. Arguably, semiconductor manufacture requires a lot of water. So I will wager my $1 today that you will not see a chip fab in Southern Nevada, ever. In both cases, the prevailing ecosystem strengths emerged because each had a collection of resources that were already there, whether they were buildings and structures and whatnot because of history, or because of the ground, the terrain, the access to natural resources, and so on. So cultural evolution. One culture evolved towards innovation, one evolved towards entertainment, and, well, it's right there in the name, fun economy, and perceived viability. If you ask, and I've done this, I've traveled around the world in my time at Intel Corporation, so recently, 7 years ago or something, but in the last decade and continuing today, when you ask someone anywhere If you were going to gamble in America, where would you go? Vegas. If you were going to start a .com startup, Silicon Valley. So each has a reputation that precedes it. It's long earned and long living. The perception of viability of each, depending on, if I want to go gamble, I can do that in Silicon Valley. I can go to a card house. Bay 101 was right down the street on the 101 freeway, right down the street from where I lived. So there are card houses. There are ways to gamble. And as it turns out, Lake Tahoe, not a unapproachable drive if you're in the mood. If I want to be innovative, I can go to Vegas. I can do that. I can create a startup in Vegas. It's been done. It's being done today. So nothing precludes either of those things from happening in the other. However, when you think about startups, .coms, innovation, chips, technology, artificial intelligence, Silicon Valley comes to mind. When you think gambling and shows and now Formula One, but if you think about professional sporting all in one place and I can gamble and you're going to think Vegas. So these are the things that we have that we can lean into and make the most of. So if we assume the fun economy is only going to gain more momentum and interest, how can we lean into this? How can we turn this into a benefit? Clearly, we saw from the Formula One debacle that it's a benefit for some to lean into something like Formula One. However, it costs others. Is it zero sum? Not quite, but not everyone came out ahead. The benefit was not realized by all of the people who were impacted by the Formula One project. And there are only going to be more such projects. Boring, for example, we're putting tunnels in underground. And I will ask this again, and I will continue to ask it. Why are they not putting some tracks in there and making electric monorails to run through these boring tunnels? They could be running like every however long, a couple minutes. Why do I have to climb into a car with a person and have them drive me through a tunnel? I don't see that. I guess because of the Tesla affiliation. But why is there not? In fact, when all that collapses, because as I'm speaking today on the 15th of March, 2024, Tesla is the worst performing stock, I guess, listed on the S&P 500. And the rumors are that it has more room to fall. So we'll see. But yeah, eventually, once the boring tunnels are complete, I guess, I think it would be interesting to do an assessment of whether a monorail system would be valuable. There is a monorail on the Strip, so often ignored, but I've been on it. It's useful. Does anyone know we have that? It should be on the asset map. We don't even have an asset map per se. There's been an attempt. I've done an episode on that. Pain in the asset map. More work needs to be done there on a recurring basis. Continuous introspection, perhaps. Does promoting the success of the Super Bowl or Formula One to big business, that is the Locate program, bringing big business to the Super Bowl, for example, sitting on the paddock in the VIP sections or whatever, celebrating, the political term is glad handing. It's not what you think. That's a different thing. Glad handing is just, hey, glad to see you, glad you're here. Does this fun economy make the greater Vegas area more or less attractive to big business? What about small business and startups? So when I was in college, I went to Harvey Mudd College. One of my classmates, unfortunately no longer with us, Eric Fain, would say probably seriously, I don't believe he was joking. Now, he had grown up in Colorado, so he was familiar with Colorado. He said, if I was going to start a company, I would do it in Vegas, because how could you not hire people? You get to be in Vegas. And he was, of course, envisioning the fun economy. Here's the problem. When you want to, have you ever seen the desk of a programmer? If you see them on YouTube or something, got to have two monitors or one big giant monitor. You can't have just a normal 27 inch. Got to have the 50 inch, got to have the curved display, got to have the 2 or 4 monitors stacked on top of each other, the vertical one over here. Why is that? Because there's a thing called cognitive load, and programmers, especially younger programmers, will say, it's so distracting and it breaks my flow if I have to switch my view from one monitor to another. Or I'm sorry, from one window to it. So I got to have them all open on multiple monitors. Cognitive load is a real thing. I think having multiple monitors, we landed people on the moon. We landed people on the moon with fewer resources than we provide on desktops of recent college graduates today. I'm totally looking up the Apollo computer programmer. Margaret Hamilton. Gee, I was thinking Elizabeth. Yeah, Margaret Hamilton coded up a whole bunch of assembly language by hand, probably on numeric keypads. Did not need 4 monitors on her desktop. Just saying. So to Eric's positing this, why would you not want to have people move to Vegas? Programmers, technologists. He was also getting an engineering degree, so we were both, tech oriented in our education. Having been here in the Vegas area for 10 years, but also having been in the industry for 30, I will say that having more distraction is not a good thing. Attracting people to Vegas to live and work because it has a fun economy that's thriving, not necessarily the way that you have a positive outlook on your worker throughput, efficiency, growth, etc. Look at the Raiders. The Raiders moved to Vegas. How many of their players have been arrested or had other troubles taking advantage of the fun economy? Not judging, but it is a distraction more than an asset for some of the things that the greater Vegas area wants to do with their economic growth, their economic diversity. So touting the fun economy as a pro is not always true, my opinion. So how do we know what we have here, and how does anyone not here have any idea what is actually here to draw them in? The Locate program, which I've referred to now, is one such thing, $2 million spent. So this is clearly, while there is a focus on entrepreneurial ecosystem development, LVGA did participate in the EDON survey and report on our statewide and then regional economic ecosystem health. I don't recall the title. I've linked to that article that paper, that study so many times. Did an episode early on with the publisher of that study, Mo Collins. As I've reflected on the content of that article, it's very surface level. It's not covering some of the things I mentioned at the top of this episode regarding continuous evaluation of, or through introspection of the health and wellness, the vitality, the viability of the ecosystem and the people in it. So I think it was a snapshot, a point in time. It's already, it will be 1 year old it was April 29th, I believe it was published, 2023. So it's coming up on a year old. I will suggest that it is mostly out of date. Some of the conclusions and recommendations were fairly generic. Some of the data in it was already stale. So I'm going to say that the time to reassess that assessment is upon us. How about with continuous introspection? How much work will it take to convince businesses of note? So the 16 identified in this article that you may read from Sean, not deep diving Hemmersmere. What will it take to get them to relocate or at least establish a presence in Southern Nevada? We have 40 million visitors, according to the LVCVA, approximately 40 million annualized visitors and convention attendees and so on. So there are 40 million people visiting here. We already know that there's a affordable housing issue, that people are being evicted. The service economy, the service industry is a tricky one. A lot of people were priced out during the pandemic lockdowns and a lot of closures, lack of tourism. If you ever see job openings, there will sometimes be 1,000 job openings for resort staff, for gaming, for service industry in general, bartending, cooks, chefs, whatever. There's a very strong culinary union here, by the way. Very strong. So what do we have here? What would make me as a CEO or as a founder, no real title just yet, just starting a company. Why would I want to move to Vegas? Well, where can I find information about what lies in store for me and my company or my co-founders or whomever when they move here? Anecdotally, I've heard from some people who relocated here that their children were not having a good time in school, that the education resources here were not quite what they were hoping they would be. There's always a chance to go to private school for some, not always, I guess. So there's private education and so on. The Hollywood 2.0 movement, if that goes anywhere, based substantially on not being in Hollywood, so that's fine. there is not a tremendous amount of talent around media production here yet. There could be. So that will be a change in the makeup of our economic diversity, our workforce diversity. So that could happen. Does it happen today? No. So you have to have an early adopter like Mark Wahlberg, perhaps. And we'll see where that goes. So that's not going to happen today, nor will any sort of notions of next Silicon Valley-ness, which is never going to happen, but just the notion of establishing innovation as a focus will take time. The culture of innovation needs to be cultivated. So analysis of our ecosystem, I think, is important, essentially critical of the ecosystem as a whole, not merely the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, but overall economic, health, vitality, viability, etc. The Downtown Project Retrospective is an opportunity to ask people who participated in a focused entrepreneurial development effort in the and those who do not know or recall, Downtown Project included not only tech startups, laptops, coffee shops, co-work, hangouts, and so on. I'm not diminishing those. I'm just saying there were tech startups, there were consulting and services startups, there were retail food, retail sales. So there was a collection of different things. It was not merely an attempt to be another Silicon Valley, which is interesting. So you had a diverse collection of people with diverse ideas and focus areas attempting to be entrepreneurial in an existing downtown, which had its share of normal retail establishments, bars, restaurants, storefronts, etc. So we can actually look at that footprint and the people who tried or thrived, maybe both, in that footprint to establish and develop their entrepreneurial endeavors, rather than comparing what could happen here with other places. Now, you can still do that. You can compare Las Vegas and Silicon Valley. It will be a fairly clear difference depending on what you're looking at. You want to do fun economy? The San Francisco Bay Area has some fun things. It is not the same as Las Vegas, and vice versa, regarding gaming and all the other fun economy pillars. Innovation, more likely in Silicon Valley. We've done this. Okay, so why do we not examine more closely where we were? I moved here just as the Downtown Project was beginning to blossom. It was becoming more visible and more, it had been moving along for some time prior to that. So I want to say I got here in about year 2, later in year 1, early year 2. I think it was August of 2013. So right there in the same place where we find our innovation district today, we can actually ask people who were there, who've been there, done that. What was missing? What could have been done better? Which resources do we already have that we can take advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. Introspection, where we learn from what is working and what is not today, in the present day, is useful to determine what we should continue and where we should look to improve, or even enable where there are gaps. We may be missing things. We need them. Nobody knows. Nobody talks about it. By the way, holacracy will not figure into this. That's another story for another time. Surveys, now and then, looking at stale data and opaque survey details. The top lines, not the inner details. May be useful in some ways. That's one of my contentions with the report I mentioned by Mo and her company. This is not an insult on her, but the data available was not necessarily current, and I don't believe there was time or resources to conduct a really, truly deep dive. So originating a ongoing, continuous introspection effort internally, people on the ground who stand to benefit from having this clarity, this transparency, maybe that's you. If you're trying to operate a business here, should you be listening to Sean at the Review Journal, write an article that may or may not have the full story? Or should you be able to look at real survey data from real people on an ongoing basis to see where things are growing and shrinking and improving and getting worse and so on? So if we do that, if we rely on old data, on third parties, on people that are disinterested, which is okay in some ways, but not okay in others, maybe we need both. So, but if we have interested local parties and disinterested third parties, examining different pieces of data, but on a continuous, in our modern area, with our connected population, a continuous introspection effort, we should be able to develop a picture of our current ecosystem, health and vitality on an ongoing basis. And you and I, and anyone considering relocating to, or maybe even relocating from the greater Vegas area, could do so transparently. So we can see for ourselves, without relying on afterthought reporting in our local media, what's really happening. There's a lot more to talk about with this. The Innovator Vegas Foundation has a project called My Muni, which I'm the managing director of the Innovator Vegas Foundation. We're hoping to engage other civic volunteers from around the country and help to develop platform tools, so a platform and the tools, that will enable ongoing, continuous, or nearly continuous, if you want to be a stickler about continuous versus discrete, but continuous integration, continuous introspection to assess the health, vitality, viability, and so on of an overall economy, geographically based, but also communities within, individual components or elements that make up the ecosystem, those culture of innovation and communal elements. So I'm using community with a small c, access to capital and overall health, when startups form, when they depart, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of work that can be done here to help the people in an ecosystem be more aware of where they are and what is available to them, should they desire to, if they have an aspiration or a nascent desire to start their own company, or if they're considering moving their company here. If you're a big company, do you want to listen to the $2 million marketing pitch, or do you want to be able to see what am I getting myself and my company into if I relocate to this new place? Do they have the Super Bowl? Great. Do they have a talent pool that I can hire from? That's a good question. So there you go. I'm going to leave it there. The Introspection project is a part of, by extension, the Downtown Project retrospective project, which Cafe Genius is driving, but as part of the My Muni project that I mentioned, which is part of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, but which also will ideally involve other civic volunteers from around the country. And ideally, some of what we come up with will be, I don't want to say exposed, that's not a good word anymore, but the people that visit the greater Vegas area, perhaps as many as 40 million per year, while not 100% of those people, some fraction of those people should be able to see what is going on in Las Vegas. And by the way, most people have no idea where the boundaries are for Las Vegas. So I refer to the greater Vegas area, or even Las Vegas, as everywhere, everywhere you want to be. The Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas sign is not in Las Vegas, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can develop tools, methods, platforms that are extensible, we can deploy interesting locality-focused applications, but that can be tailored to different localities. Why reinvent the wheel when we can develop wheel templates that work in this framework? So part of this will be an ongoing, continuous introspection effort, so that at any time there should be visibility on who has internet access, who has electricity, where are the business licenses, what's the talent pool like, who's hiring, why are people unemployed? The list goes on. That's it. I will remind you, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo if you are interested in not only locating my various projects and audio programs. We will be moving all of the existing places where you find this audio program will remain as much as they remain in business. Google is getting out of the podcast biz. They're going to switch to YouTube as a source, so we'll get that going. But we really intend to self-host the primary or authoritative point of publication for the program. So all that will appear on the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo page. And we'll do the same on the Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/DanHugo service as well. You're under no obligation to pay anything, but if you do want to support this effort, we are powered by coffee. More the better. That's where I'll leave it today. Thank you for listening. As always, keep an eye on our ecosystem. It might be moving.